Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party. Something rather miraculous happened a couple of weeks ago. Something that gave us pause to celebrate. And that is something that we've been in short supply of this year, because the Scottish national football team qualified for a major tournament. As Obi-Wan Kenobi might have said, now there's a phrase I've not heard in a long time. A long time. To give you some context, the last time Scotland was in a major football tournament, the latest Batman was George Clooney. The MCU wasn't a thing, people were excited for Star Wars prequels, and the highest grossing films of that year were Armageddon, Saving Private Ryan, and Godzilla. Today we are celebrating the Underdog, defined as the person or team considered to be the weakest and least likely to win. It could be cinematic greats, such as Rocky Balboa, Cool Runnings on the Mighty Ducks, or even Dodgeball, a true underdog story. Or we might want to come off the sporting field and perhaps enter the courtroom, a la Erin Brockovich, or into battle like 300. What's it going to be? Well, we're going to find out, because as always, I'm joined by Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. For a second, knowing you and your sports, I thought you were going to talk about The Undertaker finally retiring, but no, it was the Scottish national team.
Well, I mean, if you know wrestling is pretty much like a science fiction or a comic book movie. No one ever really dies or retires. I can see him coming back for one final match in a couple of years. Who knows? If his Zimmer frame holds out that long. Cool. So yeah, it's quite. It was quite the cause for celebration, even to the point where I thought pubs were going to get closed down all over again, because in Scotland, up in Aberdeen, we had one particular place where, let's just say, they did not adhere to social distancing when Scotland scored a goal. I mean, I can understand that, everyone was criticising them for not being social distancing in the time of a pandemic. However, almost even rarer than a pandemic is Scotland doing well at football. They are the classic underdog in that they will basically get within an inch or a millimetre of winning, and then it will conspire against themselves to make sure that it all falls away. However, it did not happen this time. They went through on penalties, and it is something to celebrate. And so, Lee, what is your first cinematic underdog?
I'm putting the dog in Underdog, and I'm going with Best in Show. So I'm going with Jerry and Cookie Fleck and their little Norwich Terrier, Winky. So Best in Show is probably one of my favourite comedies it's one of my favourite comedies of all time, and it's probably one of my most rewatched films of all time. It seems to be a go-to film for just like watching with friends, or I'm feeling a bit down today. You know what? I'm going to put Best in Show on. And I remembered renting this film back in sort of the early 2000s on VHS from Blockbuster at the time, and I think I watched it twice on that Saturday night. I just laughed and laughed, but it's one of those ones, like, there's all these different kind of couples in it. So there's Jerry and Cookie Fleck. They're sort of a lower class kind of couple from Florida. They can't pay their credit card bills for the hotel. They end up staying in sort of the utility closet. And, even sort of Jerry Fleck has two left feet and has to show Winky at the end. And they're up against sort of Beatrice, this kind of upper class stereotype kind of yuppie dog. You've got Bloodhound Hubert. He's a fantastic dog. You've got this poodle, Rhapsody in White, this like past winner. And then you've got this gay couple that have this really sort of amusing little Shih Tzu puppy called, I think it's Miss Agnes. So yeah, the odds are against kind of Jerry and Cookie Fleck all the way through the film. And it's one of those ones, like, when they succeed at the end, like little Winky kind of sees the day, and just sort of Jerry with his two left feet is able to show him. It still makes me kind of smile, and I think it is the best literal underdog kind of story, and a film I just recently rewatched again, and it still made me kind of cheesily smile when there was the success at the end.
Yeah, I remember. I think I've only seen this film once, but I do remember really enjoying it. But it is in line for a rewatch, because my wife and I recently binge watched the entirety of Schitt's Creek, and basically anything that has the pairing of Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara in it is something that we're keen to rewatch. So it'll be her first time, so I will definitely let you know what she makes of that. But an excellent choice, and good to see that the canines are, in fact, yes, going to be represented here on the show. As for me, first up is I'm going to go with the traditional sporting movie, but I'm not sure it's definitely not your traditional sort of underdog where it's one person that you're following and they're battling against the odds. Here we have an entire team and a manager, really, and this is the true story of the Oakland A's, led by manager Billy Bean, who decided to tear up the rulebook in basically putting together a baseball team and decided to use, yes, the incredibly cinematic world of statistics in order to build his team from the ground up, trading out star players in order to bring in people who he knew would be able to get hits and get on base. And, this is basically a film which is right up my street. I love this sort of statistical sort of thing. Anything, it's like the Big Short, I guess, of sports movies, and it really goes into detail about how important this sort of stuff is in maths and stuff like that. And again, it's a true story, so I mean, you could have read up on it in advance. I didn't know how it was going to go, so it was still quite a thrill watching it as they build towards the end of the season. And I'm not going to spoil it, and whether or not they do succeed and win the World Series. I will leave that up to you to watch it. But I think this is one that you're probably a big fan of as well.
Yeah, this is one I really enjoyed. I think I watched it for the first time, was it last year or this year? It's hard to tell. It'd been on the watch list forever, but I really enjoy movies about sort of people that are just really good at their job, kind of just getting on with it. And Moneyball was so close to making my cut, but unfortunately my second choice edged it out. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And baseball is a sport I have so little time for, but I was really engrossed by sort of this kind of the origin of sort of the Moneyball concept, which has really filtered through to football and to other sports, and has become sort of the go-to slang for buy low, sell high sort of thing.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got all these sort of like NFL and whatever. You've got these wage cap systems where everyone is sort of operating within the same system, but certain sports, such as the English Premier League, perhaps, is basically whoever's got the most money is going to win. Apart from, of course, probably the greatest footballing underdog story of recent years, Leicester City, who basically proved everybody wrong on that one. But yeah, no, with the baseball thing, it's interesting how much it has sort of taken off since then. The Boston Red Sox decided to apply that theory and basically won their first World Series after about 100 years or something like that. So it's really sort of a fascinating one. It's maybe not your typical sports movie. You won't sort of see a huge amount of like on the court or on the field action. It's very much sort of behind the scenes sort of stuff, but it is really sort of fascinating and an alternative take on the underdog story, I think. So you said this one was edged out by your number 2 choice. What have you got for us?
I've gone for the countryside person that rose up against 3 different empires and to succeed. He beat a chicken farmer, he beat a duck and goose farmer, he beat a turkey and apple farmer that was Bogus Bunsen Bean. It's Fantastic Mr. Fox and his band of animal friends and misfits that were able to sort of bring together the countryside to overthrow the farming empires of Bogus Bunsen Bean in Fantastic Mr. Fox, the Wes Anderson adaptation of Roald Dahl's original book. Yeah, I it's one of the things. Sometimes when we're doing these lists, I just sit down for a few minutes and I just start I have a look around my room, like what's on my shelf, what's in my drawers, what's on maybe my Apple TV, just to get the kind of mind thinking about what am I going to go for with this one. And I was just sort of like looking along my shelf, and I thought, there's that, oh that, and then it just sort of stuck with Fantastic Mr. Fox, and like they really did sort of, win out. They really were the underdog. You think of like all the resources that they were able to kind of put into sort of bringing down the countryside. All this machines and attacks that were sort of on them, but they were able to come together using all the different skills of badgers, foxes, rats, beavers to kind of come together and bring them all down. It's a film again that I kind of would say it's been one of these ones I just love to rewatch. I remembered being really nervous at the time because it was one of my favourite films as a kid, but when Wes Anderson stop motion was mentioned, I still slightly wish it wasn't George Clooney an American as a British character like Mr. Fox, but I've come to accept that. But yeah, it's one of my most watchable Wes Anderson films. You know, it's not the best, but it's definitely one of the most rewatchable ones that you could sort of shove on in a Saturday afternoon if you're feeling a bit kind of glum.
Oh, I love this film. But when you said a sort of farm boy, I thought you said farm boy taking on the Empire, and I thought you were going to put up Star Wars: A New Hope with Luke Skywalker taking on the Empire. Because I actually had nearly had Rogue One on my list as an underdog story with the rebels and stuff like that, but because basically Rogue One is a prequel to A New Hope, you basically already know the outcome of that mission, so therefore I decided to discount it. But Fantastic Mr. Fox, a fantastic choice. One of my favourite sort of animation films of all time. I think it's just brilliant. I was creasing myself at the cinema when I watched this one. Sort of surrounded by families, and I was laughing at the way that they used the word cuss to get around basically one of the most expletive heavy kids films of all time. I just love sort of random choices of like having Jarvis Cocker as Petey sort of singing at the campfire, and then like Bogus Bunsen being one of them sort of going, "You did a bad song, Petey, a bad song," and it's just full of weird and wonderful moments. But yeah, no, it's a classic Under Fox story and a welcome addition to the list, I think. So for me, I decided I wanted to throw in something like a war film or an action film in terms of underdogs, and then sort of start to think, who is a real underdog? I mean, you think about sort of one man taking on like an entire city or an entire island of goons and bad guys, but then I was thinking, I was thinking of Commando, but then it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't think you could ever really count Arnold Schwarzenegger as an underdog. I was thinking John Wick, he's been in retirement, but then, as the guy himself says, it's John Wick. So I've decided to go for Die Hard. Yes, John McClane, a New York cop out in LA at a Christmas party, not wearing any shoes, taking on 12 terrorists at the Nakatomi Plaza. They have cased the joint out. They know exactly what they're doing, but they didn't anticipate on John McClane. And he is the fly in the ointment, the monkey in the wrench. And yeah, he just causes all their plans to be upended, and he does whatever he can to be reunited with his family on Christmas Eve. And yes, it is a Christmas movie. I will die on that hill. I will die hard on that hill. But yeah, I think he is certainly at the time in the mid 80s when you were looking at people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and your sort of Steven Seagals and stuff like that. Bruce Willis, with his white vest and no shoes, was not your typical action hero. He'd just come off of Moonlighting, a sort of a romantic TV sitcom, so he was not your sort of first choices. So therefore, I think his struggles and what he goes through in that makes him the underdog. He is not expected to survive this, and even the cops outside are amazed at how well he's being able to do against the terrorists. So I think, yes, I think he is a classic action underdog for me.
You are correct on multiple fronts there, and yes, it is a Christmas movie. I'm gutted that I probably won't be able to watch this one in a cinema this year. It's always been one of my favourite sort of go-to kind of Christmas movies. I think he is an incredible underdog, and unfortunately the franchise has gone from low to low sort of in the past few years, apart from obviously Die Hard with a Vengeance. But yeah, he is the ultimate kind of blue-collar hero, and I wish the name came to mind at the moment, but the police cop as well. I mean, he's like a real underdog as well, out there sort of trying to help John McClane through it while overcoming his own sort of personal demons. And he gets I think he gets the final shot in as well. So
he does, yes.
Yeah, he's a real hero.
He gets a wonderful redemptive arc, and a sort of, it's one of those sort of great sort of friendships and whatever that, because he's a bit of an underdog, he'd accidentally shot a kid, so he's off the streets, he was back on the desk, so, he gets a great arc in there as well. And I agree with you completely. The latter day John McClane from like sort of Live Free and Die Hard 4.0 onwards, where he's seemingly sort of a caricature of himself in Invincible. Yeah, it's like up to number 3, I think you can just about believe that he's the underdog in all these situations. But after that, it just gets a little bit silly. Yeah.
Would you ever have it as these days in sort of an action movie, like one of your sort of leading kind of supporting characters would be like a cop that had killed a kid, and like he has a redemption arc in the film? Like, I find that like hard to believe that could happen these days, and it somehow always sometimes slipped my mind when I sit down to watch Die Hard, like that is a a kind of plot line within the film, and there is that redemptive arc. It seems unbelievable that you could do that if they tried it these days with like a Die Hard, for example.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, which I actually hadn't thought about. But yeah, I think if the cop hadn't been African American, then yes, there would be a definite problem with that storyline these days as well. Another reason for people to hate on Die Hard, those ones that don't believe it's a Christmas movie anyway. So, what is your final pick for your cinematic underdogs?
This might not be the last time that we mention the work of this man this year, so I have gone with Moon. It's about Sam Bell, who overcomes his self and the corporation lunar industry to get back to Earth and to go to court with 156 other clones to achieve success for sort of these cloned individuals. This was one of those ones, again, just sort of looking at the kind of the cover, like what was around me, and looking at the DVD and Blu-ray shelf, and then I sort of looked up to my poster section and I thought, Sam Bell, that is like a true underdog story in a way. Yeah, he is this smart enough man to go work and live on the moon, so he is like probably in the 1% of like genius brains, but like he is a kind of almost blue collar scientist in a way. He's out there, sleeves rolled up, isolated, alone, and like, I'm just going to turn around and look at the poster now, and it's like, the hardest, like 250,000 miles from home, the hardest thing to face is yourself. So you've got to overcome that odds, and I can imagine, like, if you're going up against yourself, like that is a proper underdog situation, because like what yourself is going to do. So it's always hard to get the better of yourself. So I think the dynamics between Sam Bell 2.0 and Sam Bell 3.0 are really fascinating, and sort of the more we sort of learn about this lunar industry, and I think like ultimately the end, they're able to outsmart kind of the lunar industry, that they're basically sending these mercenaries to kill Sam Bell. He not only manages to get back to Earth, but he's able to get the story out, and I think that's something that's been really important. We've seen little hints of it in Mute, but I'm looking forward to reading the upcoming comic book, which I think a lot of us that were fans of Moon when it came out have been waiting a long time for. So yeah, I'm excited to pick this one, I think, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with it.
I will agree. A very left field choice, but hearing your description of it, it's very hard to argue with it. Yes, this is essentially a clone who manages to get, like you say, one up over the original and the company that have sent him out there. One would argue maybe with the description that Sam Bell number one was, smart enough to go work on the moon. He was smart enough to send a version of him up to the moon, but still be able to enjoy himself on Earth as well. But yes, no. An excellent choice, and yeah, one which on my next rewatch I'll have that in mind, and yeah, I might view it just a little bit differently. But yeah, no, like you, I'm very excited to see to get my hands on a copy of Maddie, Once Upon a Time in the Future, by Duncan Jones and Alex Sigampi, who this was the third film in the Mooniverse saga that he was wanting to do. Obviously, the budget was far too big, so he's turned it into a graphic novel. But he has, I think he's basically said that it will have a potential resolution to the Sam Bell story, and then also, as it always, somehow he's going to have his Chesney Hawkes cameo in there as well. It wouldn't be a Duncan Jones project if it didn't have a Chesney Hawkes cameo. So that's great. For me and my final choice, I have to say, I've gone kind of safe back to the world of sport, and basically a film where the underdog is basically about a 10,000 to 1 shot a last-minute substitution into an elite MMA tournament. This is 2011's Warrior, and the underdog is Brendan Reardon, played by Joel Edgerton, who is a last-minute replacement in this tournament where he not only has to battle the best in the world, Koba, played by Kurt Angle as a Russian, but he doesn't really speak, so it's fine. And then also going up against his brother, Tommy Conlon, played by Tom Hardy. If anyone has seen this film, this is the film which convinced me that Tom Hardy would easily be able to break Batman's back as Bane. And it's basically, this man is a submission sort of specialist. He used to fight in MMA, but now, he's been doing it, working as a teacher. He's basically up against it with bills and stuff like that, so he decides to do some fighting in parking lots and stuff like that in order to make a bit more money. He gets suspended as a teacher, so then has to basically risk everything and enter as a last-minute substitute into this competition where he could win, $1 million as the top prize, and fight, basically 4 people over 2 days. And it's an underdog story. You could see where it's going to go. He's got an estranged brother. You kind of know that they're going to meet in the finals. What I think is great about this film is that each have a really sort of proper, full sort of story, backstory, a full character arc going on. And it really could go either way in the final fight. You don't know which way it's going to go. I'm not going to say who wins, but I think that if it had gone either way, I think the audience would be happy. But I have to say that this film, even though I don't have a brother, I don't have any daddy issues, this one really sort of packs an emotional sucker punch for me. When the national sort of song kicks in at the end, I don't cry at movies, but I have to say I was maybe getting there was a little bit of mist in the screen, I think, when I watched this for the first time. And actually, even then, even when I watch it at home as well.
I haven't watched this one since it kind of came out, but I remember sort of watching it was like Star Trek Nemesis at the time in 2002 and being really impressed by sort of Tom Hardy as a talent, but naturally that was the film that drove him to depression and I believe some sort of substance issues as well. So yeah, that's something that's going in that film's infamous favor. But he was always someone that you looked at and went, he was a shining light in a pretty mediocre to terrible film. And I think Warrior, along with something like Bronson, just sort of that rolling kind of steady kind of beat of films that were kind of coming out, we thought, like, this guy is truly something special, and more people are realizing it. And yeah, I think anyone that saw Bronson in this definitely thought he could break the bat. So yeah, fantastic choice.
Yeah, because I mean, this in itself is a bit of a cinematic underdog in that its production budget was 25 million. It only made 23 million at the box office. I think it was released in sort of September 2011, when I think people were more interested in, I think it was the Ryan Gosling double bill of like Drive and Crazy Stupid Love. I think they were both out that time. People were more interested in seeing Ryan Gosling shirtless rather than Tom Hardy, but things have maybe changed since then. But, it did get very good critical reviews. Nick Nolte was nominated for an Oscar for his performance as the dad, the alcoholic father. So I think it's a film which has sort of gained a bit of a cult following since then, and people have sort of realised just how good not only a sporting movie is, but also an underdog story, a redemption story, and just a damn good movie overall. So yes, that's 6 films of cinematic underdogs, not all from the sporting field. Some very left field choices from you, Lee. As always, I would have come to expect that from you. You're never going to go with the easy option on this one, are you?
Never. Though I literally did have a dog, so I feel like you say safe, I say I definitely picked a dog. So I took it very, very literally.
So, as always, we like to recommend a little something else to go to our list. And you can keep track of everything that we've recommended this year on Twitter. We've got a feed going and a thread going on that where you can keep a track of everything. So, what is your non-cinematic underdog recommendation of the week?
I feel like I've recommended nearly every one of these that exists on the planet just now, but this is definitely one of the best, and that is the Trek Film Society series that started yesterday. So it's hosted by Marcelo and Diego, but a lot of people that are listeners to the Nerd Party in general will recognise the host of this podcast series, and that's Mike Schindler. So he is like one of my favourite podcasters, and one of the reasons I kind of got into it. And I think what works so well with this series is that I, like Mike, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, like love it. but I'm interested in it in sort of a deeper sense than sort of like chatting about the ins and outs. It's like, what's its place in sort of film history? How does it work as a film? What's good? And kind of casting a kind of critical eye on it. And that's what they do with this series, a mixture of a super fan like Mike and someone like Marcelo that's maybe watched the films once upon a time, maybe seen some of them never again, and Diego, a bit of a fan but now not a completionist. And I'm sort of making my way through that series at the moment. So it's dropping weekly on Sundays, started yesterday, but if you sign up to their Patreon, which can be for as little as $1, which is less than £1 here, you can sort of get all 14 episodes. So that's like an hour-long introduction episode, which is really good, and then the remaining 13 episodes. So I would highly recommend that if you're a Star Trek fan, but also someone that has a bit of a critical eye and wants a sort of Star Trek podcast that's just that little bit different.
Excellent. Yeah, no, definitely worth checking out that one. For myself, since we're not able to get to the cinemas, I've been back on Netflix this week, and my wife and I have discovered a new show which was recommended to us by several different people, and it stars A24 alumni Anya Taylor-Joy in The Queen's Gambit, about a childhood chess prodigy who's basically she has battles with addiction, drugs, alcohol, and it's a really sort of interesting. It's not based on a true story, based on a novel, but she stars as Beth Harmon as this basically chess prodigy in the 60s who becomes like a real star of the show, but is battling some inner demons, and it's really, really good so far. About halfway through, but it's likely that by the time you listen to this podcast, we will have already binge watched and finished the rest of it. So definitely a recommendation for any A24 people, but anyone who also, it kind of makes chess sexy, which I didn't think was possible. But yeah, there you go.
Did you see the tweet in the sort of the past hour about the film from Netflix, about sort of its numbers? Let me get this up, because this is boring but very interesting.
This is live breaking news.
Oh my god, I can't believe I've it's their most popular scripted show series ever. 62 million households in the first month have watched it. Though you always have the caveat with Netflix there, I think it only counts if you watch like 3 minutes or something like that. It immediately gets classed as a viewer. I have not been one of the 62 million yet. I'm going to watch it before Christmas for sure. I'm about to rewatch Euphoria season 1 for the A24 project this week. So the week after that, I will 100% be watching The Queen's Gambit, and I'm looking forward to sexy, horny chess.
Absolutely. And, as a quick bonus one, if you've been listening to the A24 project this week, I think both of us and Awais, who guested on the show, would also heartily recommend Rami seasons 1 and season 2, Lee.
100% on season 2.
That's a little bit of a running joke for if you listen to the A24 project. Basically, Awais and I had both binge watched both series, but Lee, for some reason, had kept it to watch until after we'd recorded season 1. And then, how long did it take you to watch season 2?
2 days.
2 days. There you go. So another great recommendation. So I think was it Hulu in the States, or you can get it on Stars with Amazon Prime here in the UK. So an extra little bonus one for you there. So that's all from us this week. We'll be back with more film, TV, and pop culture related chat next week. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.